So let's go to defensive linemen and a pretty good crop of guys. I would say, and let's start the conversation with Reuben Bain. You guys heard what I talked to Larry about, and man, I felt really good to hear him say what he said, because I really feel strongly that Reuben Bain is going to end up on the interior, and people that have watched what he's done at Central as an edge rusher, like, they think I'm totally out of my mind, but like, I'm not going to say he's going to be the next Warren Sapp. That's not fair. But this is a kid that when he puts on 20, 25 pounds of muscle and gets into college and starts eating the way they eat and all that, I think he is going to grow into that role. It might not happen year one. Steven, I'll start with you. You've looked at a lot of tape on Reuben Bain. Your thoughts on where he's going in his career?
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. I can't remember who it was that said it, but someone in here said, if this dude was 6'5", he'd be the number one recruit in the country. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. He has the skill set. He's got the motor. He's got the strength. He's refined. He's remarkably refined for a high school edge rusher. This kid's 17, 18 years old. He's going to be playing at Miami. Or he's going to be enrolling in Miami fairly soon. He has every skill that you could possibly ask for an edge rusher, except his size. And like I said earlier, size does matter. It may not be the be all end all, but it's not exactly easy.
Steven, if you keep saying that, somebody's going to come in here and want to sign you up for porn movies or something. Okay.
Okay, if that happens, I'll shave the mustache.
Go ahead and finish. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But he is someone who I think is going to have a very long and very successful career at a school like Miami. I think the question is going to be where, because he was already playing at a pretty remarkable level of competition. He actually played in the game against IMG. I'm not certain of this, but I think he matched up against Francis Malgoa in that game whenever he was playing for Miami Central. And I think that this is a kid who, like you said, if he were to add on maybe 30 or 40 pounds, now we can start having that conversation. Okay, could he end up being an interior defensive lineman? Because we have seen some undersized defensive tackles have a lot of success. There's a few, defensive tackles 6 feet or shorter in the NFL that have kind of been able to command that level of attention up front. I think one thing that's going to be kind of interesting to watch for Reuben Bain is if they're going to want to move him to the inside, not because they want him to really eat up blocks as a run stopper, as a nose tackle, but more as maybe, like a 2-eye to try to create a mismatch with him on a slower offensive guard, because I definitely think that he's someone who has the skill set to come in and play right away. You see all these highlights, he's coming hard off the edge, really violent hands, good speed, really good arsenal of moves for a high school recruit. He looks like a top 10 edge rusher in the country should. He looks like a number 1 recruit in the country would if he were about 3 or 4 inches taller. I think this is another kid who I would kind of say he's unlike Okunlola in this way, in that he already gets it. He's already been tested, and he already has all of these skills. It's just going to be a question of where do they want to line him up? How is he going to develop? And is he going to put weight on? That's something that I'm really curious to find out. Do they want him to put weight on and maybe move him over to the interior?
Zuby, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love Reuben Bain. During my first year covering, football down here in South Florida, I'd say, there are 2 guys that I thought were, alphas on the field. Like when they stepped on the field, they made the impact. One was, Brandon Inge from American Heritage. I feel like that kid is probably one of the best players in South Florida that I've seen personally. The second alpha I'd say is Reuben Bain. I feel like he just commands attention from his teams. I've seen Miami Central quite a few times this season, and he's just that guy that when Reuben Bain talks, everyone listens. He's the leader on the defense. He's talking up the young guys. If a young guy makes mistakes, he's there saying, hey, get your head right. This is a big game. And I just, love that mindset that he has. One thing that he told me, Mario Cristobal kept preaching to him is we need a guy like Reuben Bain that's a South Florida bred guy that's a known winner. I mean, the kid doesn't know losing. His head coach, Jude Joseph, said that. He's been in high school for 4 years, and he's won 4 state titles. So he's bringing that winning mindset, that winning culture to Miami's locker room. And that's something that he said he wanted to bring to Miami as well, that dog mentality, that win by any means type of guy. And I believe he can bring that energy. I don't know, like we talked about, if it's going to be at the edge, I hope it's at the edge. If it's inside, I hope he does well inside. But something that he's 100% going to bring, regardless of position, is a winning mentality and that leadership role and that alpha mentality. So I love everything about Reuben Bain.
All right. So you heard what Larry Bluestein said about him. He thinks he'll end up on the interior. I think he'll end up on the interior. You've been the flag waver for him staying at defensive end. We talked about it the other day. You said, but Gary, I'm 6'2", and I was just standing next to him an hour ago, and I was looking up. You're like, Reuben Bain can stay on the edge. Have you changed your mind?
I'm still a believer he can stay on the edge, but hearing Blue a little bit, that might have persuaded me a little bit, but I'm still a firm believer he can stay on the edge. But if he does put on, like you said, maybe 20, 30 pounds, he's at 280, then you move him inside. But I'm still a firm believer when he gets there, he'll play edge unless Mario and those guys say, hey, you're inside. So,
well, I like my defensive ends to look like Collins Achimapong, okay? I think back to Calais Campbell, Greg Rousseau, Jalen Phillips. I like my big, athletic defensive ends that can knock passes down that are going out on the bubble screens and things like that. And I'm not going to lie, that influences my thinking a little bit on this subject.
I would say one thing though, what someone he does remind me of is kind of a Akeem Messidor type of guy. I know Messidor is not the 6'5", 6'6", but a really, really high motor. And we saw what Messidor did this year when he was 100% healthy. He had that big game against, I believe it was Virginia. We had 2.5 sacks, 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. So I feel like if Bain does stay on the edge, he would be a Akeem Messidor type of guy, real high energy, not 6'5", not 6'6", that 6'3" range, and he can be really productive there.
And I'm going to throw some Achimapong video up here on the screen. And Matt, why don't you weigh in on this subject? Bain, Achimapong, how do you like your defensive ends looking?
Well, I'll talk about Bain because he seems like the hotter of the two topics, and because I somewhat disagree with everybody. I would never, of course, disagree with Larry Bluestein, but I would always disagree with you, Gary.
What a surprise!
But when it comes to Reuben Bain specifically, he had 58.5 sacks in 2 years at defensive end. I am not sure why he can't be a new position, a hybrid end tackle, where you're not only moving him inside on third downs. Okay, this is a guy who I think, depending on the opponent, you can move him to any number of different positions. If it's a run heavy team, he should certainly be, I would think, at end, at least early in his career. But if he's as good as we think he is, to me, you don't just say, okay, a guy with 58.5 sacks at a top program playing top other programs. I think he had 3 sacks against IMG, half the game going as Maui Goa. You don't just say, oh, he's a tackle. I'm sorry, you don't. You let him get to college. You figure out how you can best use him as a weapon. Because if he's your best lineman, period, you don't just want to put him on the inside and say, that's it.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
No.
Based on that theory that you just said, Warren Sapp, an NFL Hall of Fame tackle, never, ever sees that position for 1 second.
Warren Sapp was 6'1" and 280, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
This guy's 6'3" and 270. I mean, I don't see where
only because Azubi says he's looking up at him. He doesn't look 6'3".
Warren Sapp gets listed higher too.
Azubi might not really be 6'2", by the way.
Okay. If you think that Reuben Bain is Warren Sapp, I can't even finish this discussion because he's not. It's not the same body type. It's not the same type of player. This is a guy who, against the top high schools in the country, got 58 sacks, over 58 sacks, 58 and a half in 2 years. I'm not just saying, oh, forget defensive ends with this guy. That's insane to me. You let him do both. And not just, like I said, okay, he'll move inside on third downs. You figure out, specific to opponents, specific to an offensive lineman he'll be going against, he can dominate that guy. If a guard and a center happen to be really weak on that team, sure, let him match up there. This is a guy you can specifically game plan against opponents with, which I don't think Miami's ever done. But I don't think Miami's had a guy like this where you can call I hate to call him a tweener because if there's another word which is the opposite of tweener, which means it's a good thing, right? Because tweener is usually a bad thing. Oh, he's a tweener. We can't take him. He's too big to play linebacker and he's too small to play defensive line. This is the first really good tweener where I think he could play across the entire defensive line and excel across the board. And they could specifically match him up in games and make him a monster. Usually your offensive line has to guard against, the left end from FSU, right? Or we got a game plan. We're going to chip him with a running back. We're going to use a tight end on that side. If you're moving this guy around like offensive players move their best receiver around, right? Take it to the offense, man. Be innovative on defense. Defensive coordinators tend not to do that because they don't have the personnel to do that. This is a guy where they can actually be innovative for the very first time at Miami.
Wow, man. I agree with you so much on this one. I can't believe it. I'm going to throw another guy. I mean, Zuby, you believe this? That I agree with Matt? All right, I'm going to throw another guy into the conversation here because Steven and I have watched him extensively, and we both think he is going to be an unbelievable player at Miami on the defensive line, and that is Joshua Horton from Fairburn, Georgia. And I'm going to throw his tape on Steven, but take us through it. Talk a little bit about what both you and I saw when we started watching Josh Horton.
I love Joshua Horton. I think this dude might be the steal of Miami's recruiting class. You look at this dude, and the first thought that I had whenever I watched this tape was, how's this dude not have like every Power 5 offer you could think of? Big physical interior tackle, great hands, tremendous pad level. I truly love how violent and aggressive his hands are. And again, I get that this is a highlight reel, and this is meant to glorify him, but his speed, his physicality, his willingness, his pad level is outstanding. There is just so much to like about this dude as an interior defensive lineman. And I can't believe that, this wasn't a kid who was being recruited by Alabama, by LSU, because, if you don't know any better, you'd probably be thinking that this dude has just as many stars as, any other high blue chip recruit in the country. This is a kid who I really like a lot. I think he's someone who's been massively overlooked, and I think he's someone who definitely is going to have a future at Miami. I mean, the plays that he makes in this tape by themselves, I mean, the awareness that he has, really good football IQ, really good understanding of leverage. Even though he's always the biggest guy on the field, you see he's still able to establish leverage against smaller guys. I'm not sure how long it might take him to adjust and develop to a school like Miami, because like Matt said, whenever you sign defensive or offensive or defensive linemen, it's kind of understood they're probably not someone who should be relied on right away, just because it typically takes maybe a season or two to develop, to really understand how to play in the trenches. But I mean, if this kid turns into a fraction of the kid that he looks like on this tape, I mean, my goodness, he is going to be a really, really special talent. Or not that he looks like on this tape, but that we think he can become from looking at this tape. He's going to be a really special talent.
All right, Matt, Jaden Wayne, another one in the defensive line class that's been much debated. You heard what Larry said about him. People have debated whether his ranking is spot on. Nobody's debating Josh Horton because nobody knew about Josh Horton because he was hidden on the North Carolina commitment list until about a month ago. And Steven and I started watching the tape and going crazy. Jaden Wayne's been on the Miami commitment list for a while. Your thoughts on that one?
All right. Nobody's going to want to hear this, but I'll say it anyway. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to Azubi, Steven, Gary, Bluestein about it. You know who you should pay attention to? Pay attention to the guys who are making $5 to $10 million a year who decide to offer the top players in the country. And to me, that tells you how good a guy is. This is a guy who took an official visit. He had his top 6 back in May: Oregon, Bama, Georgia, LSU, Michigan State, and Miami. Offers from all of them. I believe he took official visits to Georgia and LSU, maybe, or had them set up. Oregon, those were all set up. This is a guy who, you name a top team in the country, like, they wanted him. They wanted Jaden Wayne. So I don't care if he has 1 star, 5 stars. whatever 5+ stars is. Who makes this stuff up? Is there a 5- stars? Because if you're going to do 5+, you should at least do 5- and keep it real, okay? But to me, the offers matter. He had every top program in the country offer him. The people making $10 million instead of the $4 million that I make from Gary every year, they're making $96 million than me. If they, over 10 years, in Mario's case, if they think he's good enough, man, like that tells you everything you need to know. This guy is not, he's probably underrated. Everyone says he's overrated. He's underrated, okay? If you ask every other college coach who offered him and was dying to get him in the class.
All right, so Miami's not done on the defensive line. They've got those guys committed. They're working the portal hard. They need more tackles, okay? They got plenty of ends. They need more tackles. You've heard a lot about Thomas Gore from Georgia State. They found out about him? Louis Cristobal, Mario Cristobal's nephew, is a teammate of Thomas Gore. So, of course, the Cristobal family in general is watching Georgia State quite a bit. So when Thomas Gore goes into the portal, it wasn't real hard to get a scouting report because they had the guy who goes against them in practice every day in Mario Cristobal's nephew, Louis. But they also had family members that have gone to see Georgia State play and obviously have seen Thomas Gore play. I will be surprised if he does not end up in the class. Texas A&M tackle, Stephen, how do you pronounce this guy's name?
Tamish Adele.
Okay, there you go.
Sure.
Thank you. Sure. Miami's been doing well with him. Stephen, would you agree there's a decent chance he ends up in the class?
Yeah, I put in an RPM prediction a few days ago. I think I picked him at an 80% chance to land at Miami after talking to him over the weekend after he took an official visit to Cal. After he took official visits to Cal and Miami. I still feel the same way. I'm doubling down on my prediction. I'm not making any adjustments. I'm saying I still think there's an 80% chance that he lands at Miami. He kind of told us without really telling us the order or which schools he was really considering. His final four was down to Miami, USC, Cal, and Michigan State. And he said that some schools that he's considering that have a better record than Miami, they may not be able to offer him X, Y, or Z. Well, the only school that he was considering that had a better record than Miami was USC. So process of elimination, Miami's got a better shot than USC. He took an official visit to Cal, and he said that his girlfriend came along with him on his visit to Miami. He was also able to bring his parents with him on a couple of his different visits. And he said that his girlfriend loved the interactions that she had with the coaching staff. He said that she got really positive vibes, and that her opinion is one that he considers pretty heavily. And now he wants to take a little bit of time to kind of talk things over with his family. The one advantage that I feel like Cal really has over Miami in this is their pitch to him was, look at our depth chart. Who do you see on our depth chart that you're like, yeah, that's a dude who's going to pose a serious threat to me? Cal is in a much more desperate situation than Miami is. Not that Miami doesn't need him, because they certainly do. But Cal really made a really big push. But if it's going to come down to Mario Cristobal against Justin Wilcox, Mario Cristobal was freaking plucking Justin Wilcox's backyard for 4 years at Oregon. Cristobal's beat out Wilcox before. I would bet Cristobal beats out Wilcox again. I'm doubling down with my Adelaide prediction.
I'll agree with you on that. I was so jealous of Matt's early prediction on Mark Fletcher that I got into the RPM as quickly as I could on this guy, and I won't try to pronounce his name. And I was right there with you, man. I think I did 75% or something, but I'm expecting him to be a Miami Hurricane as well. And there might be more that come up in the portal here. Miami does